Well, thank you for that. That was quite intimidating, actually, following Fiona, and particularly when she's got such a huge fan base. But yes, I am Vicky Gosling, and I am the Chief Executive of GB Snowsports, and also the Chair of GB Surfing, two sports that clearly rely extremely heavily on the environment. As Britain, with regards to surfing, I mean, we're very much at the developmental stage of that journey, and we're very new into it. In fact, actually, tomorrow we will be announcing our first ever GB progression squad for surfing, with the ambition of hopefully getting them to a place where we compete in LA in 28. In 28. And with GB Surfing, it's fair to say, actually, that's certainly much more advanced in its journey. The past few years for our elite athletes have actually been incredibly like being on a roller coaster ride. I mean, if you think about it, we had 3 seasons in the build-up to Beijing, which were absolute chaos, thanks to COVID. We've had Brexit and the restrictions that's placed on us when we need to get out to Europe, clearly because we don't have the mountain ranges and snow here. And on top of that, we've had inflation. And then just to top it all, actually, we had a bit of a disappointing Olympics, and we lost 3 million of our funding, which was clearly not particularly helpful. But that said, against all of the challenges, I have to say, we not only survived it, we thrived it, thanks to our incredible athletes and the team around them. And this past season, we actually ended up with at least 1 medal in every single discipline under our umbrella, of which there are 12. We ended up with at least 50 World Cups. We had 12 World Championship medals, and 2 of those were World Championship titles. We had a fistful of Crystal Globes, and we had X Games medals. In fact, it was the best season that Britain has ever had in its entire history in snow sports. And I think at the back end of that, actually, our athletes could actually turn around and say, not only can we stand up against the rest of the world and compete in snow sports, but we totally belong there. And it's been hugely impressive for everyone. I think the proudest moment of last season was actually looking, I mean, this is only in March, looking at the medal table and realizing that Britain was actually second in the world in freestyle snowboard, just behind Austria and just ahead of Switzerland, which isn't bad for this, well-known snow sport nation, Britain. So the big thing that we've now facing into is obviously we've had an incredible season for snow sports, but how do we actually, the big question we're facing is how do we keep this future really bright for this talent, the talent coming through in surfing that we're already seeing, the talent that we've already got in snow sport, and the talent that's following, when we're facing the challenges that the environment's throwing towards us in terms of unpredictability, sustainability, and affordability, of which we need to really start driving to take action. But before I sit down and actually do some Q&A, I thought I'd show you a little snapshot, actually, because it's always more inspiring when you see our athletes in action. A little snapshot of the highlights of this season that's just happened, and another great reminder why we need to do absolutely everything within our gift to not only protect our winters, but to protect our environment. Okay, thank you.
0.78. Can he make that up? It's going to be tough here at the bottom to do that.
Zoe Atkin was in the lead for the early part of this competition to get one more crack at it here.
Classman 5, holding on to it.
Just as Great Britain are about to take the lead.
On today, the last lap, Miguel can barely watch. This is going to be so close. The run that could push Mia Brooks towards the gold medal if she can get through. Forwards into the final jump. Oh, yes! Mia Brooks from Great Britain is the world champion.
I feel like I'm gonna cry.
It's bronze.
Union Jack ready to celebrate.
But I never stopped believing. I never stopped trying.
Oh, God, he did it! This could be absolutely historic.
A gold medalist.
World champions for Great Britain.
Right on.
Spine-tingling stuff from somebody who likes a bit of snow sport. So look, I want to start off with the athletes and a point that Fee made earlier about the power of athletes as ambassadors, particularly when we're talking about climate. How important are they for you?
I mean, they're huge for us. They're our ambassadors. They're all incredibly passionate about ensuring that we are doing the right thing, that we're being responsible in how we behave. They themselves each have individual projects. You'll have seen, well, hopefully, Lucy Campbell, is a driving force for surfing. She did the paddleboarding across the Atlantic, picking up plastic on the way. We have similar, with all of our athletes, where they're really trying to drive forward and impact change. So the athletes are great voices, and also they're inspiring the next generation. People are looking up to these athletes when they see what they can achieve. Mia's only 16, so she's a fantastic ambassador for the next generation, and using, their platform to educate youngsters is amazing.
So we can come back a little bit to how you equip athletes to have those conversations, but we've got to put this in the context of success, right?
Yeah.
No success, it's harder to platform your athletes. Success requires training. What's going on with the ability of your athletes to train at the moment, given the climate?
And this is where I think actually the biggest challenge comes. So, in fact, I was just saying earlier, wasn't I? This morning I had our senior leadership team call, and the head coach is just like, Vic, Dubai's gone, as in the camp, that we've got there. It's a big Red Bull competition. And
so just to explain how significant and what Dubai means, what it
requires. So Dubai is massive for us. This particular event's massive for us. It's cost us a lot of money to enter into it. It's international, and it's not happening because the glaciers basically melted. There's no snow there, and for Red Bull to cancel it, that's big, and that means actually clearly they would do whatever they could within their gift to make that so, but we can't do it. It's the first time it's ever been cancelled, which I think is huge. And we're in a position this summer whereby, we're in a really rock and a hard place, because in order to keep up, so you've just seen some of the results that we've achieved. We've literally, just behind Austria and these big nations, and yet we can't use Europe because actually the conditions aren't there anymore. So we have to get them out to the southern hemisphere to keep them actually competitive. But that, of course, we all know it means we're increasing our carbon footprint because we've got to actually fly them over there. Or what we're doing right now, for example, is we're moving athletes around in Europe because of the way that things are in Saas-Fee, because of with the glaciers, what's happening in Dubai. And we're sending them over to, keeping them in Europe, but moving them over to Madrid so we can actually use their indoor facilities. And, we're staring down the barrel here of, I was saying again to you earlier, I have real concerns over what does the future of Winter Olympics look like. We haven't even assigned, well, we hadn't assigned recently exactly where the next Winter Olympics after Milan will be. And with the season shifting so far to the right, it comes with massive consequence.
So I do want to get to the wisdom, or not, your view will be interesting, on having Winter Olympics in places like Saudi. But first, this is a discussion about what we can do and responsibility. When you are having to consider, okay, do I send my athletes to South America? We've heard the work that, say, FI's doing with sailing. What are you doing? What is GB Snowsport doing to set its own sustainability targets?
I think for us, we're focusing on three key issues, really. It's, it's learning from people like Fi on the collaboration point is really, amazing work. And it's really important that we're learning, we're by no means experts here. And it's all about collaborating with fellow federations and experts in the field, really, to help us learn better. How can we do better practice? Education is key, whether it's education of the parents, it's education of the staff, the coaches, the resorts we're working with as well, being quite choosy about where we're operating and how we're doing that, minimizing the travel in that sense as well, so we can do clusters rather than, effectively increasing the road travel once we get anywhere. And also just ensuring, sustainable business practices and working with the right sponsors to support us with those needs. It's tricky, and I think Fi sort of touched on it as well. It comes down to, as well, it's such a tight game when you've got finite resources, financial resources, where you're putting the money in trying to improve things. So we're looking at electrical vehicles at the moment. And we need to bring a partner on board with electric vehicles, and we're looking at where are the charge points, how are we going to operate when we're actually,
this is for moving athletes around resort, during competition,
in
for
resort,
training?
in competition, everywhere, really. So how do we, switch to electric vehicles, but they're really expensive for us to invest in, and when we're trying to, at the moment, we're using hire vehicles because we don't have a car sponsor. But we're trying to then look at our policies and our practices as to how we can educate the athletes in keeping that sort of transport to the minimum, but again, learning from some of the other nations that are doing it quite well. I mean, some of the resorts we're operating with are amazing. They are doing a fantastic job, I have to say, in how they're tackling some of this, because it's in their interest, clearly.
And you have seen many global sports events come and go. There have been lots of significant announcements in the last few weeks and days. Victoria in Oz cancelling the Commonwealth Games because they can't make it work financially. The World Cup, the soccer football World Cup being held across basically all, I mean, it is the World Cup because it's everywhere and therefore nowhere. Is it possible to hold an event of that nature in a sustainable way? Or are we going to have to really do some deep thinking about what these big sports events look like?
Well, I think one thing that gives me a little bit of reassurance in this space is I've just come from the International Federation conference, actually, and they're now really starting to look at the strategy as to how, and that we need that, because you need it at every level, don't you? So particularly at the strategic level.
Yeah.
We really need them to be the driving force in this as well, because we've struggled in that this past season, the World Cups were scattered. So you had South America, you had, Southern Hemisphere to Europe, back to Southern Hemisphere. And it was ridiculous, quite frankly, and it didn't help anybody do things the right way. And they're now driving a much better strategy in terms of actually how can we get nations to put their hands up and host these events, and actually for them to be responsible in their hosting practice. So whether it's the resorts that they're using, the energy consumption, what they're doing with their waste, and I think that's really reassuring. But the reality is, I have a real fear that we're going to end up with a situation where we end up with, the Middle East hosting it, for example, because they can throw money at it and they can artificially make the snow, and that's what happens. But, that's far from where we want to be in any stretch of the imagination.
And in your view, it is an obvious conversation. A Winter Olympics in a very, very warm place is by definition a bad idea.
It's a very bad idea. Yeah, it's a very bad idea. And I mean, seriously, if we get to that, we're in real trouble, aren't we?
Okay, activating athletes as advocates. How'd you do it?
Well, I think a lot of it is down to education as well. In fact, we're just in dialogue with Protect Our Winters are fantastic, and they've got a great educational package that they are, they do for athletes and for the community in general. So working with Protect Our Winters, working with and the good thing is our funding body, UK Sport, have actually just started really focusing in on this and bringing in a consultancy team to help work with us so that there is a greater understanding in how the athletes can take on their own projects, how they can then step forward, and then we need to help them with their social side of it, talking about what it is that they're doing, understand what their concepts are, and how can we help make them happen. So, for example, with Lucy Campbell, as I say, with her surfing project, their paddleboarding project, and just really giving them the confidence to take it forward. I mean, they're full of great ideas. They're incredibly passionate about what they do. They're very, very conscious about what they wear. We're looking at waxes. At the moment, we're going completely for eco-friendly waxes, and the good thing is, again, that the International Federations enforce that, which is really important. Again, looking at the materials that we're using in the skis, the boards, the clothing, it's all really important, and the brands that we actually relate with as well. The athletes come to us and say, I'd like to work with this brand because it's a really good advocate and it can take us to the right place and help fund my project. And we have to make that happen.
And to mix my sporting metaphors, behind every Marcus Rashford, there is a team of people that are helping, advising, managing that process. It doesn't just happen
and they don't have the time, they don't, they're massive advocates and they're hugely passionate, but they're also elite athletes and they're driving, they're very, very targeted and they're very focused on what they're delivering. So they're actually extremely busy. So they need that help and they need that support behind them to enable them to go and do what they've done there. I mean, that didn't happen without the amazing coaches, the wax technicians and the support network behind them, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, they're phenomenal, but they need you to enable them and empower them to go and deliver, and that takes the support behind them.
Final question from me before you guys get your chance. Sorry, I know I'm hogging all the questions, but I've got so many. Former sports correspondent, so it's a bit it's down my path, so to speak. Diversity and equity in mountain sport and indeed surfing, traditionally very male, very white. How are you delivering pathways to broaden diversity? Because you do elite level, right?
Yeah.
Grassroots is a different matter, but there is an overlap. So how are you going to shift the dial?
Yeah, exactly. Again, I mean, interestingly, I found it quite challenging. I think we found it quite challenging with Snowsports because there's a lot of socio-economic involved in getting, a lot of kids tend to do it because their parents do it. We found that, that's been happening. And we, as you say rightly, we've got the home nations who look after the pathways, we look after the elite, but actually you've got to interconnect them both. And we've been coming up with, innovative solutions as to how we can get kids into the sport in the first place and just enable them to see actually it's for everybody. If you want to do it, where there's a will, there's a way, and we just have to try and take down those barriers. We did a Project Balance, which was effectively taking 30 kids, going into Westminster and taking 30 kids from the academy, 70% of them are on meal vouchers, and actually giving each one of them a skateboard, a helmet, pair of pads, getting our athletes like Casey Ormerod down there and getting some coaching for these kids.
Skateboarding is such a great pathway for sliding sports.
It's such a great pathway, and it's far more accessible and
you can do it
far more affordable.
Front door, right?
Far more affordable. And then the cherry on the top was then we got the kids into the snow domes at the end of it, and then they got a couple of lessons in the snow domes where they'd already found how to maneuver the board, and then you get them into the snow domes, and then it's far more natural. Yeah. And I mean, that was a great way of doing it. And we're trying to find a way of actually rolling that project out and making it more sustainable, and encouraging the home nations to take those projects on and make it so. With surfing, I mean, there's some incredible people out there driving some. I don't know if you've met Yvette Curtis.
I know Yvette.
Yeah, so Yvette's fantastic. She's doing some brilliant work, and we've actually
she's on the board now, isn't she?
Well, she's working with us now, and then hopefully we're going to bring her in to our DNI. Thanks for that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're, but she's phenomenal, and there's no doubt about that. And she's been doing some incredible. If you just look her up. Wavinis, she does great work with ethnic minority groups and women in particular and young girls in surfing. And I think that's and it's not easy, but it's definitely more accessible, I would say, in terms of trying to drive that DNA. But you've just got to constantly keep thinking of innovative ways, make sure that everybody's got the right mindset and take it from top to bottom.
Supporting a lot of the grassroots.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people doing this work anyway, so you
Work
catalyze,